All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining Caddle today. My name is Elise. I'm the Assistant Marketing Manager here at Caddle, and I'll be monitoring. Today, we have Caddle CEO Ransom Hawley, as well as Head of Marketing Camille Kennedy, leading us through the conversation on Instacart. We have a lot of insights planned for today. As usual, we'll be sending the deck and webinar recording following the event, so you can reference it and share with those who couldn't make it today. Welcome, everyone, and let's have Ransom take it away.
Thank you, Elise, and thanks for everyone for attending. Looks like got almost very close to the number of people that registered, so it's exciting. I mean, this is a very interesting topic near and dear to my heart, and we've got a lot to cover, so we'll move quite quickly through these slides. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop them in, and we'll try to address them as we go through, but lots to cover in this pretty dark channel in terms of the availability of data and insights. Okay, so let's jump in. What we're going to cover today is we'll give you just a brief overview about Caddle, and we promise we won't, sell or plug too much about our fantastic platform. But then we'll focus exclusively on Instacart and high-level stats around awareness and usage, where they're shopping, what they're buying. Also cover things like comparisons to other platforms, similar types of platforms, as well as types of nuances of Instacart in terms of the price premiums and also memberships and how they compare to other membership type platforms. So lots to cover and lots of very interesting data. And being an avid user of Instacart myself, I don't think I've been in a grocery store in about 6 months. Some of my hypotheses were proven wrong as a sample size of one, which we don't typically love to rely on here. So that's why we do what we do. So we'll give you a quick overview of how Caddle works first. So Caddle is a mobile-first data and insights platform. We reward Canadians, we recruit them, they download the Caddle app, they can sign up online as well. We are desktop enabled, and we reward them for sharing their data and engaging with brands. We have a fairly large Canadian panel. We have over 10,000 daily active members. We have over 100,000 monthly active members from all walks of life. And we work in with types of platforms like Environics and Deloitte, who have their diversity metrics like prism profiling that speak to the diversity of our panel as well. So not only do we have a very large panel, anywhere from 5 to 10 times the size of other types of consumer data and insights panels, but we also have one of the most diverse panels and most active on a daily basis, which enables speed, which is one of our differentiators. So we can connect and engage with our panel members in a number of different ways. For the purposes of this panel, it was leveraging our survey tool. We have receipt capture, we have ratings and reviews collection, and we have a stimuli through video and image as well. But this one was exclusively through survey, and we surveyed quite a large panel to engage with. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Instacart has really they've been around for over a decade, but they've seen incredible growth throughout COVID. And they are available in 10 Canadian provinces, and they are a retail delivery and pickup service concentrated in the US and Canada today. And you'll see the quote on the right-hand side. The type of substantial growth that they've seen through COVID is enough to break almost any company, but they've been able to thrive and do so quite well, as I've been an avid user throughout COVID. And they've been able to improve the platform and the stickiness from a member retention engagement perspective as well. But really, they aren't just, we're going to focus on grocery today, but they aren't just grocery. That's why we say retail. And it's not just delivery to home. You can also schedule pickups as well. So you'll see in the coming slide the types and the breadth of retailers that they have today that are available within Canada, and that's going to only continue to grow. And they've got some exciting pilots happening that we think are going to continue to attract Canadians to the platform, which is why this really needs to be a place that retailers and brands start to focus, because I believe it to be one of the easier places to win share as a retailer and brand over the next 12 months, 12 to 24 months. And while winning share is never easy, this platform, I think, will enable you to do that, as you see some of the data that we'll cover today. In terms of our methodology, which is, so we surveyed, this was a day's worth of collection. So we had over 7,900 Canadians participate on this particular day. So a very large group of Canadians. And then from that, we start to segment as around people that use the platform, that don't use the platform, and why, and then also people who are kind of heavy into the platform, that are Instacart Express subscribers, which means they pay either a monthly or an annual fee. So we really start to unpack the different levels of awareness all the way down to heavy users. And the last slide I'll cover before passing it over to Camille, and I keep looking over at it.
I haven't said a word yet. This is impressive.
I know she's the pace keeper, so I'm just like, I'll let you cover Ransom.
You're doing a great job.
So a few other stats to kind of ground us in Instacart. About 1.5 billion in revenue in 2020, and about 35 billion worth of retail sales, which is so that the actual basket price value of those sales. They actually hit their first profitable month, which is not that surprising. And it was 10 million. And I think the year prior to achieving profitability, they had lost 300 million, which is a fairly substantial amount of money. So COVID's been pretty good to them, as well as them good to Canadian consumers and US consumers. They have 9.6 million active users and about 500,000 people who shop on behalf of these users. And in March 2021, they were one of the world's most valuable startup scale-ups, if you could even call them that now, at $39 billion. So they are a force to be reckoned with, and they're continuing to grow. And we've actually connected in with Instacart and are working on a few things together, but they're certainly a company to watch and are investing heavily in continuing to scale that growth throughout COVID and post-COVID as well. I'll pass it over to Camille.
Yeah. So we're going to walk you through some of the insights from this study that we just ran. We also paired together some data that we ran from the other delivery services apps. I know some of you have probably joined us for past webinars, but your feedback is invaluable. And last time, the most asked question on one of the webinars we had was all about a Costco Instacart slide, which was really the impetus for this webinar. So feel free to keep asking us questions. The more insight we can get from our audience on what you're trying to find out, what you need to know from the market, will really help guide our content. And also feel free to reach out to us directly. Just to Ransom's comment about the questions, feel free to submit as we go. We will be answering them at the end. And if we don't get to your question, we'll try to get to you over email. So Instacart in Canada, for those of you guys that have used it, you probably recognize some of the retailers. I live in Toronto, so when I grabbed this slide, these are some of the retailers that were available to me I live downtown Toronto. So the variety of retailers, does vary based on the location that you're in. But Instacart's consistently and constantly expanding their retail offering. One of the recent acquisitions to the platform was Dollarama, which we'll talk about in one of the upcoming slides. So let's get into it. When it comes to Canadians, basically half of you know what Instacart is. So hopefully most of you that joined this webinar had already heard of Instacart. If not, we'll dive deeper into some of the details today on how Canadians are using it. But that's a pretty strong awareness number considering the newness to market and the fact that it is an app. I think COVID definitely helped their awareness because Canadians were looking for options and alternatives to getting their groceries delivered to home. And given some of the big retailers that they had on the platform with the likes of Costco, they were really able to up their awareness in the Canadian market. But currently, right now, there's only about 11% of Canadians that are actively using the app, which isn't surprising, and it skews heavily younger and also male. We'll talk a bit about the demographics. But one really interesting fact that came out of this, and if you guys don't know what Net Promoter Score is, we'll talk a little bit about what it is. Instacart's Net Promoter Score right now, when we ran this data, was a 52, which might not seem big or great, but just sort of in context, a Net Promoter Score is a trusted research methodology that provides an index to measure a consumer's willingness to recommend that product or that brand to somebody else. And so really they take the promoters and they minus the detractors and they come up with this score. So when you're looking at, probably the best grocery retailer in the US, like H-E-B might score somewhere in the 50s. We do have a lot of our grocery retailers scoring quite high, which we'll show you the ratings. But a company like Nike or Apple, they're probably sitting somewhere in the 50s as well. So 52 is a really good score considering Instacart's newness, and as well that they are quite a tech-forward platform that isn't necessarily used by that many Canadians yet. So if we go to the next slide here, we can kind of see how they stack up against the other delivery services. So we asked, Net Promoter Score across the other popular grocery delivery and retail delivery services, but this one definitely skews a little more grocery, just so you can see a comparison here. And again, they're sitting somewhere in the middle of the pack with a very strong score, which is a great sign considering, they're such a young company, and suggests, to Ransom's point and the projection on how much they're set to grow, that they've got like a good foothold for longevity in the marketplace. So some factors to be considered by Canadians and reasons we'll talk a little bit about the reasons why people aren't using Instacart before we get into the what they are and why they are using it. But really the main one is the preference to go in store and to do their own shopping, which isn't unlike some of the other delivery services. People like to feel and touch produce and select their meat in store. And so it's similar reasons to some of the other ones. But the second reason here is obviously price. We'll talk a little bit about pricing and how much they charge through the app, and which retailers are winning and losing based on having same as in-store prices versus having a premium. So some really interesting reasons here. If you just go to the next slide here, we can see some of them. But firstly, let's talk a little bit about those that are using Instacart. So of the people that are using Instacart, 50% of the users are using it once a week, mainly for its convenience and fast service. So the convenience, the ease of being able to get it directly to your home. As Ransom mentioned, sort of once you start using the app, the user friendliness of the app to actually recommend products to you and make it really easy to almost replicate or duplicate the same grocery order that you had last time, sort of like the food delivery or restaurant delivery apps do. And it helps save a lot of time, and it's been a real lifesaver, especially in key peak periods of the pandemic when you were scheduling, your PC Express delivery for 1 week out from now. This is a service that you can choose to pay a premium for if you want to get same day or even within the next short window of time. So it's sort of more of an on-demand than some of the other platforms. The frequency of use is really impressive, and I think one of the things that makes the app really sticky for the user base that is actively using it.
And it's one of those things as well that I'll touch on quickly. So if you're a user of Instacart, it really allows you to use it as kind of like your grocery list. And so frequency of use, you may not be ordering on a frequent basis, but you may be checking them with the app because you realize you need something and you add it as an ongoing grocery list. And then you can schedule deliveries like a week or so in advance and then still continue to add that. I mean, it is, I'm not being paid by Instacart, but it is a very convenient and seamless process, especially as you start to use it, to your point, Camille. It really learns your shopping habits and makes.
Well, and speaking of who's using it, I think one of the big hurdles to the non-users, which we'll talk about in the next slide, so hold on this one for a second, but once you've used it a few times, it is a lot easier to use. So I was at home with my parents in the pandemic who are boomers, and it was really hard to navigate for them at first, but now that they've ordered so many times, it's really easy for my mom to go on there and just say reorder or kind of shuffle through the things that she's frequently bought. So it's a lot easier kind of once it's been set and they've learned your preferences. But in terms of who's actively using it, really no surprise here. It is predominantly a Gen Z millennial app, and it is predominantly male. So interesting, and also they tend to be younger, male, and also Walmart or traditional grocery store shoppers. So just sort of interesting in terms of where they shop, which we'll talk about in a bit too. In terms of who's not using it, again, not super surprising. Non-users tend to skew a little bit in the higher age groups, as well as less females are using it. And then if you look at the people that are just completely unaware of the app, again, it tends to be the older demographics. You know, maybe they have somebody grocery shopping for them already, or someone in their family that's helping them, like I was helping my family in the pandemic. But interesting just to see the generation gap as well as the gender split. Okay, so in terms of Instacart users versus non-users, and Ransom, I'll probably get your help on this slide because it's a little confusing. These are not meant to add up to 100. We're looking at first, you know, where do you primarily shop for groceries? And what we're finding is that the Instacart users, or at least almost half of the Instacart users, are traditional grocery store shoppers. But 20% of them also are shopping at discount store, which is interesting with that Dollarama ad as well. And then as well, Instacart users, they're heavy Walmart shoppers, as well as they also shop quite frequently at Costco. So given that those are probably the top two retailers on the platform right now, this makes a lot of sense. And then when you look at the non-users, you can see a little bit of a difference in the numbers here. So Walmart really is helping drive app usage, because Instacart users shop almost 2 times as much at Walmart than non-users of the app. Walmart does offer in-store pricing via the app, which is different to Costco, where Costco is charging a premium. So non-users are more likely to be found as well at the traditional grocery stores. But interesting to see how the different groups are taking up usage on the app and how frequently they're using it.
Yeah, and I will mention something because this ties to a future slide. I mean, it's kind of the chicken or the egg here, and depending on what's available on the platform, right? So Instacart users, I think the number is, we'll get to the slide, is 60% of our Instacart users tried a new store through Instacart, which is mind-blowing, I think. So these numbers being higher to Walmart because Walmart offers in-store pricing, which is a differentiator on the platform, and they're quite prominent along with Costco. So there is less of a footprint of traditional conventional grocery stores on the platform. The two highest grocery banners on the platform in terms of usage are Costco and Walmart. And then with discount, you know, there's a few on the platform. There's Real Canadian Superstore and No Frills, and I think others in other markets. But there is not a huge presence today with conventional grocery, which, you know, is it because they're using the app that skews this way? Likely, and not necessarily, you know, how they traditionally shop prior to Instacart.
So can Instacart convert these non-users? So we asked, you know, if you're not a user, what's your likelihood to use Instacart in the next 6 months? And it wasn't a super strong response. So again, suggesting that the people that are currently using the app are pretty app loyal, considering how frequently they log in or they shop, but equally really important for Instacart to keep those users and really make sure that they can kind of keep a hold there. I think as they look to expand new retailers into the platform, that might be a big draw, like we saw with you know, Dollarama. The last webinar that we ran actually was on discount, and we talked a little bit about how Dollarama is actually one of the destinations for grocery shopping for some of the older demographics like the boomers. So it'll be interesting to see as they continue to add to their portfolio and their mix beyond just grocery, you know, how they can attract new users to the platform, not only in the different age demographics, but also just regionally across the country, given that there's different retailer options in each city and province.
That's
okay,
right.
I think Ransom, this is back over to you.
I think it's also it's worth noting that this data we'll be collecting quarter over quarter, and I think we'll start to see that maybe shift up in terms of may or may not engage or sign up for Instacart. So it'll be a number that we'll be tracking along with all of these metrics, but it is certainly going to be, we believe, going to be a platform that continues to grow. And we alluded to the fact that, we stated the fact that 11% of Canadians use it. So, you know, which is more than 1 in 10 Canadians are using Instacart. That's still a gigantic number. And 50% of Canadians are aware. So again, we'll see that shift over quarter, but this is certainly something you want to pay attention to. We were a little bit surprised on the previous slide, we don't have to skip there, of how small that top 2 box was in terms of definitely well or probably well, but we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Okay, so in the next slide, this is the stat that I had mentioned where that I think is staggering in terms of Instacart shoppers trying new stores for the first time on Instacart, and 60% of the Instacart users said they tried a new store. What those new stores were are Indigo being number one, and so you'll see 42.2% of that 60% of new stores fell in with Indigo, and they have that's not that surprising. I mean, not necessarily a high traffic, high penetration retailer, but they have in-store pricing and they have a lot of interesting products, and they're not necessarily convenient to get to. And they do a fairly good job at being front and center on the platform. So it's an interesting retailer to have on the platform. And again, it's not just grocery, right? But number two was surprising to us. So of that 60% of new stores, 23% was Costco. And this platform allows you to access Costco if you're not necessarily at a convenient location. For me, we buy from Costco, and we're in St. Catharines, and the Costco is in Niagara Falls. So it's like a 20 to 25 minute drive. But also you don't necessarily need to be a member to access Costco, and Costco prices are around a 15% premium when you purchase on the Instacart app versus in store. But as you'll see in some of the coming slides, most of those Costco shoppers are aware of that, and they're willing to pay that premium for the convenience. And then we've got a few others, but really the key takeaway here is as a retailer, you have a platform of young grocery shoppers and shoppers that are mobile savvy and have a high aptitude to try new retailers. So this is a great way to drive that trial, which is traditionally very difficult and expensive to do. In terms of where they shop on the platform, this was the number one and number three weren't surprising. So we have three charts here. We have where they shop through Instacart, and it's a select all that applies. So these aren't meant to add up to 100. Then we have, in the light blue is shop for groceries, but not through Instacart, and then shop most often through Instacart. And so I'll focus on the orange bar, which I think is the most interesting. And again, this deck will go out and be shared. But so the number one most often shopped on Instacart is Costco. Not that surprising. And they joined back, I think it was July 2020. The most surprising was number two for us being Indigo, and number four being Bed Bath & Beyond. So of the top five, only three are grocery related. And so you have Bed Bath & Beyond and Indigo in there. So this really is a platform for shoppers, retail shoppers in general. And there is, a high degree of cross-pollination between these retailers. So while we focus and our client base focuses within grocery and grocery retail, it's a great opportunity to capture new shoppers that are also shopping in different areas. And depending on how, as Instacart progresses, understanding what are in those baskets and targeting and ensuring that you're understanding these shoppers and their whole basket versus just that silo of where they're shopping with you. So there's lots of interesting opportunities as this platform matures and the data becomes available to improve some targeting and consumer understanding. It was a shocker to us that Indigo and Bed Bath & Beyond fell in at number 2 and number 4, which is why we run this data. And then we asked around, and these are not surprising stats here, but what else they subscribe to. And so we're focusing exclusively on the Instacart users, so that 11% of the Canadian population. Where else do they have subscriptions or memberships? And so the Instacart users are much more likely to have an Amazon Prime membership, are about the same likelihood of having Costco membership. And then as you'll see down here, it kind of tapers off to some of the smaller platforms. But not surprising, mobile savvy. But as you look to, as a brand and a retailer, as you look to understand that omni shop, really the heavy shoppers of that omni channel and that omni shopper are really attracted to platforms like this, which is not surprising as it skews a little bit younger, as Camille had shared earlier. Now there's on the next slide, there's if you're not familiar with Instacart, you can download the app and sign up, and you can just do one-off orders. And there's, they have delivery fees, and they have, I forget what the other fee is called. There's two types of fees. And if you subscribe monthly or annually, you get a discounted or free or express delivery. So there's, if you're a weekly or more frequent Instacart user, then certainly pays off to become a subscriber to Instacart Express. Of the Instacart users, 70% of them pay for a subscription to Instacart, which is a staggering number. And so we've got 43% of them pay annually. So they sign up, it's $100 a year for access, which is more than Prime, and it's more than the Costco membership. Well, depending on which membership you get. And then we have a quarter of them that pay monthly. This is a number we'll be tracking month over month as well, because typically when you try the platform, you get flagged and targeted for signing up for Express. You try it and then you convert, and there's, I think, 20% savings or something if you pay on an annual basis. And then over the next 6 months, this is more of a chart that we're familiar with, but of the people that don't currently pay for a subscription, you've got about 21%, so 1 in 5 or so that say they're going to sign up for that subscription. Okay, so how does Instacart stack up in terms of membership, renewal, loyalty? If you remember, we had an Amazon Prime subscribe and save webinar, and we compared a Prime versus Costco, and they were pretty close. So we asked them their likelihood to renew that membership. So of the Instacart members who use and subscribe on a monthly or annual basis, how likely are they to renew? And the numbers are pretty impressive and similar to other platforms that are, very impressive in terms of retention and stickiness. So Instacart, the top two box is about 88%. You'll see there is a variance. So the red bar is the one that say they're very likely to renew. And you'll see on Costco, 73%, our top one box, I am very likely to renew. That drops off a little bit for Amazon Prime at 65, and it drops off a fairly significant amount top one box for Instacart at 52%. But when you look at somewhat likely or probably will, that's 35. So that's a large point. So as we look at the top two box, which is a normal statistic to look at of people that are likely to renew, they do have fairly close comparisons to these very impressive staples of Canadian consumers, which are Costco and Amazon Prime. Okay, so now let's get into a little bit of spending. So if we jump onto the next slide, Elise, we are comparing different spends. So the average spend for a grocery order on Instacart are $35 or less, and that threshold for if you're an Instacart Express subscriber for that free shipping is $35. So not surprising that if you can do some types of orders, and there are, you'll see the split between how they use the platform in terms of large orders and small orders and a little bit of both. But you'll see that skewing a little bit lower. But what you'll see is there still is a fairly significant amount of the Instacart membership that spends $100 or more. So if you look at 100 plus, you're still looking at close to 1 in 5 are spending $100+ per shop. And then we look at, on the right-hand side, the average spend per grocery order for those who primarily shop at Costco. And not a surprising slide that they're spending more. I mean, every basket at Costco tends to spend more given their average price per unit. I mean, you could, with the Instacart platform, you could order a bag of dog food and have it delivered to your door and have the grocery fee waived because you'd hit over that $35 threshold. So there's, while this platform is used for fill-ins, as you can see, there is still a fairly significant population of the platform that uses this platform for those larger orders as well. Okay. So Instacart launched in Canada at Costco in July 2020. And that certainly helped with awareness. It certainly helped with attracting membership and retaining panel members, as well as driving awareness across the country, because it is something that you'll see on Costco.ca. What we have is that, so we knew at the beginning that 50% of Canadians are aware of it. What's interesting is that 73, so almost 3 out of 4 consumers that have used Instacart say they spend more on the platform than they do in store, which is an interesting area to dive into in terms of purchasing products. I mean, from a sample size of 1, again, we can dig into this deeper. It's much easier to purchase, and I find the scrutiny of what I'm buying is less so through the app and through the platform than it is in store, especially when you're in front of a set and you see, you might go and you grab your trusted brand, and we'll cover on how shoppers shop. But then you might look, to the bottom shelf or the lower shelf, you might see a cheaper or a smaller option. So it is very interesting that consumers are spending more on the platform, which as a brand and as a retailer, this type of behavior lends easier to drive that trial. As long as you can get in that basket, and as long as you can gain that attention, that hurdle of pulling that into the basket physically or digitally is easier on Instacart. And then we have 50%, so this is top 1 box, that say definitely will. 57% of Canadian Instacart users will continue to use the platform post-pandemic. The stat on the right-hand side, oh, sorry, Elise, there's one more thing to cover. How would you rate your experience at Costco through Instacart versus shopping in store? This is another one that really shocked us, that the shopping experience is much better on Instacart at Costco. So we had almost 1 in 2 people say they prefer shopping at Costco on Instacart. And we can, another area that we can dig into, because we really didn't, this question was more, we thought it would be, they shop at Instacart on the platform, or shop at Costco on the platform because it's a little more convenient, but they prefer to go in store. The other grain of salt to take with this is that this is during the pandemic that we collected this. So as we continue to collect this data quarter over quarter, we may start to see this. So why they prefer shopping on Instacart, I mean, it could be related to versus in-store at Costco. It could very well be related to safety precautions. So as we start to, clear this COVID pandemic, which unfortunately doesn't seem like it's going to be anytime soon, we'll continue to track this metric and see how it changes over time. Okay, so let's look a little bit more at Costco, and we touched on a few data points there. As we talked about how consumers shop, 44% say they spend much more. That's top 1 box on the Instacart. So top 1 box, it's for anyone who's not familiar with that Likert scale, top 1 box is I spend much more, I spend a little more, I spend about the same, I spend a little less, I spend much less. So the top 1 box is I spend much more. So you're having almost 1 in 2 shoppers say they spend much more on Instacart than they do at Costco than they do in store at Costco. 87% of the people that shop at Costco on Instacart are aware that the prices are at a premium. And that is a number that we thought that would be much lower. But there are some things that Instacart has introduced that call out things like in-store pricing that make consumers more aware that there might be a premium that they're paying. So almost all of the Costco shoppers know that they're paying a premium, and they're really okay with that. And then the last stat is one that we chatted about before, which is the high basket of these Costco shoppers on the platform. The next slide is about the types of shops, and so you'll see it is fairly fragmented. It's not exclusively for smaller shops or bigger shops, but about 1 in 2 Instacart users are using it for their big order for the week, and then you've got about a third using it for filling in, and then about 1 in 5 are using it equally, kind of interchangeably. Someone like myself who just uses it as a platform to do all my shopping. So there is quite a variance in how consumers are using this. Again, a very interesting data point to track over time, especially as we start to hopefully move out of COVID and not go into another wave. But this is the data that we'll be collecting quarterly in perpetuity. So really interesting to watch that as we continue to grow. In terms of how they're using the app, so how consumers are shopping, this was a data point that we thought would be pretty relevant as you are a brand or as you're a retailer and you're trying to understand, is this a platform that I want to invest more heavily in and devote more attention to? But B is how are consumers shopping so that I can optimize what I do within the platform. So you'll see the dark blue bar is all the ways that they shop, kind of a select all that apply, and the orange bar is their primary way of shopping. So you'll see the primary way of shopping on the platform is by the type of product. So if I'm searching for something, I'll type in mayonnaise, or I'll type in chips, or I'll type in meat. And it obviously varies by category, but from a macro level, that's primarily how people are shopping versus a close number 2 at 26% versus 31% is they might type in Hellman or they might type in Lay's. And so this is from a brand perspective, if you've got more than 1 in 4 saying they primarily shop by brand, and about half saying that's part of how they shop, it's a very promising way in terms of grabbing share that consumers are shopping this way. So if you are a leading brand in a space, there's a good chance that consumers will type that in and you'll pop up, versus the physical way, bricks and mortar way of going in store and being hit with that shelf. And their intention may be of picking up Hellman's, but they may then see that significant discount of a private label or something on the shelf, or maybe a smaller branded player as well. So certainly, again, to that point we mentioned earlier around being a place you need to invest. And this was a very exciting and timely announcement. Now, we included Dollarama on the chart, but it is just a GTA pilot. So Dollarama joined Instacart, which given this wave of data was collected prior to Dollarama joining, we actually did a quick data collection on this data point as soon as it was announced. We can include it in this webinar, but it will be very interesting. I think this addition, depending on how the pilot goes, if it does go nationally, there's a high appetite from Canadian consumers as well as existing Instacart users that it'll drive more adoption and stickiness to the platform. So we have 65% of Instacart users. This is amongst Canadian Instacart users of the data we collected. This is on August 15th. Said that they're willing to pay a premium to access Dollarama on Instacart. 89% of Dollarama consumers who shop weekly or more frequently. So this is total Dollarama shoppers are willing to pay a premium for access on Dollarama for Instacart. So this stat is from a macro level. Dollarama shoppers that they said that they would be willing to use and pay a premium to access Dollarama on Instacart. And then we have 66, 2 out of 3 are likely to shop at Dollarama on Instacart. So very impressive stats, and a retailer that has obviously a large and impressive Canadian footprint with thousands of stores across the country, or over 1,000. We'll need to fact check that, Camille, but over 1,000 stores. It is really everywhere. So it's an exciting addition to the platform that we think is going to drive stickiness and membership and adoption. Finding new products on the platform. And I know I've said this a few times, but sample size of 1. Designing this study was really trying to understand different areas of opportunity within the platform, and from a branded perspective, innovation, it really is lifeblood, and one of the biggest opportunities for growth within consumer packaged goods companies, where 1 to 2 times a year releasing their innovation for the year. So it is critically important knowing that consumers on this platform, they're spending more money, they're willing to try new things. With 60% of shoppers trying new retailers, which is a much larger leap than just adding an item to your basket. We wanted to know how important finding new products on Instacart from Instacart users, how important they thought it was. And 93% thought it was important. So top 2 box, either very important, or somewhat important. For finding new products on Instacart. So it is critically important to them. That is basically every Instacart shopper thinks it's important, and they want to find new products, and they want that treasure hunt within the platform itself. So as we look at there's a high appetite for trying new products and they want to discover. I believe there's still an opportunity for discoverability and searchability and helping to find new products within the platform. And it's kind of a almost like a catch-22 that we'll get to. I mean, as you use the platform in the app and it starts to learn your shopping behavior, it does take effort to deviate from your normal shopping basket, which is why it is critically important to get on the platform. You've got 11% of Canadians use it and a lot of runway. It's critically important to get on early in order to build that basket, but also critically important for this platform to help to continue to encourage and prompt and find products that are relevant to consumers based on their previous baskets. So there's some opportunity there, but there's a ton of opportunity in terms of getting in early to make sure that that habit and that basket is just made easy. Okay, so I'll pass it back over to Camille.
Yeah, we're running tight to time here. We've got a lot of content left and we'll probably go right to the hour. So if you have questions, feel free to submit them as we go. We'll stay on the line after the webinar time ends at 3 o'clock and Eastern if anyone does have questions, but we're going to pick it up a little bit. So is paying the premium worth the price? That's one thing that we wanted to know. So we first asked Instacart users whether or not they believed that they were spending more money through Instacart than in store, and 50% plus of them did agree. And they also believe that they're getting fewer groceries for the same price. So this isn't surprising. I think not everybody is aware that Instacart charges premiums, and it's not clear on the app when you're shopping at a certain retailer that you are paying a premium. So I think there's a little bit of opportunity for them to be maybe a bit more transparent with users so that they feel confident in purchasing. I did a quick audit on my Costco bill when I was helping my parents order in the pandemic. And on average, anything under $10, they were paying at least over 10%. And anything as you kind of got up into the $20, $30 mark, again, it was like a 10 to 15% markup. So things like the packs of chicken breasts were a few dollars more than they would be in store. You add that on to the delivery fee that you're paying, whether you're paying a membership fee, etc. And I think on average on a $500 bill that we spent, we probably paid about an extra $100, including the driver tip. So it is significantly more, and I think transparency will be really helpful in this area. Some other ways though that Instacart could potentially up the cart, which is on the next slide here, is most users were unaware that shopping through here, and they would otherwise shop around for a different price. But users did say that if prices were comparable to in-store, they would spend more on Instacart. So there is an opportunity to create a little more transparency and up the cart at the same time. And I think a lot of people, as you can see here, 37% didn't know that they were paying more. So just interesting to keep in mind as they continue to grow the number of retailers on platform. And with the strong numbers we saw for Walmart, it does make a case to say maybe they'll get more users through the platform if they can keep pricing comparable to in-store. So lastly here, what would make Instacart users spend even more? This is an interesting one for us because we've been working with a lot of retailers, including Walmart, through a partnership where we can syndicate ratings and reviews for products. And the reality is through the platform, you can't really see the ratings. And so if there were the ability to rate and review products through the platform, that would really help consumers be confident in the choices that they're making when they're adding products to their cart, maybe products that they haven't bought before, if it's a specific brand name that's only available at Costco. So a big opportunity and definitely something that if you guys are looking for ratings and reviews on your e-commerce products that we can help with. So this is an interesting chart. We just kind of wanted to look at Instacart and see kind of really how the pandemic did help them and what's expected kind of post-COVID. So we looked at usage kind of before COVID, during COVID, and expected usage after COVID. And I think the Instacart one, as you can see with the top line there in yellow, really did drive an increase in usage during the pandemic. Expected usage post-COVID is supposed to be kind of back down to the pre-COVID levels, which I don't think is overly concerning if they can continue to grow their user base. those people will use it just as consistently and just as frequently. So it's still as sticky as it was, but definitely the pandemic really helped kind of progress the usage on the app. And just some of the top likes and dislikes. Sorry, I'm going fast through some of these slides so we can finish on time for you guys. But we just kind of summarized, what is it exactly that Canadians enjoy the most and least about Instacart. And again, none of this is, really surprising, but I think some of the factors will definitely, play into how they market going forward and the types of retailers they bring on board. So saving time from shopping, which is a big one. And then also on the dislikes, that the prices are more expensive, once people kind of realize that they are paying a premium. But I think, given the way that the world's going and the younger demographics using this and primarily looking for convenience, the price increase isn't going to be a major deterrent. So we'll have this in the follow-up deck and you guys can read through this in a little more detail. In terms of, the loyalness of the users, I know Ransom shared member kind of rates in terms of intention to kind of renew your membership, but just kind of looking at this side by side with click and collect, we asked, how does Instacart compare to other click and collect options? And 57% of people said they prefer Instacart to click and collect, which is a big number. So, I think in terms of the value that they're bringing in terms of the service, some of the other platforms, even though consumers are using them and do rate them highly, once they try Instacart, they might not go back. So an interesting area of opportunity. But however, I think, sorry, last point there is just that if users could get, sorry, Elise, do you want to just flip back to that previous slide so people can see the chart? Yeah, if users could only get groceries one way, what would it be? And they did say also Instacart home delivery. So it still is rating strong in that area for the people that are using the app. Okay, this next one is basically at the end of the day, people that are using Instacart are still also shopping in other ways. They don't get everything through Instacart, much like even other online delivery services. Many people aren't buying their fresh produce and their meat on e-commerce via home delivery. So Instacart really is a complement to in-store shopping. 3 in 4 users have products that they will not purchase through Instacart and only purchase in-store, as I mentioned. So I think that there's an opportunity with even some of the ratings and reviews, as people get more used to doing that and they feel confident in the product quality, that there's an opportunity for people to start buying things they don't commonly buy through Instacart as well. And I'll pass you back to Ransom, who's going to have to do a quick run through here on sort of the delivery wars and some of the competitive comparison. And then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and stay on the line to take some questions from you guys.
Yes, there's just 5 more slides. So sorry, I meandered in my previous section, Camille, but I'll be speedy here. So what we did is we collected our core survey, which was about 50 questions, and that was, but we also ran as part of our daily survey, which is that 8,000 to 12,000 daily active members. We ran some data to understand other delivery services in that comparison. So you'll see here, this was collected. So the original survey was collected in, I think, late June, early July, and this one, so 11% of Canadian consumers, we quoted earlier, use Instacart. This is 12%. This is a bit of a larger sample size, as well as later on it was collected. Which is why that's 11% versus 12%, but very close. There is still a fairly low adoption, but when you look at how that compares to the other delivery services, I mean, you look at something like Costco.ca and how much effort has been put in driving that, and every time you go in store, you're hit with that, as well as some of the promotions that they've been running. And then something like Walmart.ca and Amazon. So in terms of this delivery service, it is, while 11% or 12% is fairly low, it is still, very competitive and impressive in the landscape that we're dealing with within Canada. And then the next slide speaks to the frequency. So of these people that are using this platform, how many are using it weekly or more frequently? And this is really where something like Instacart shines. So you'll see, it is up there with the PC Express, almost 45%. So almost 1 in 2 of the consumers that use the platform are using it weekly or more frequently. And we saw that was going to decline on a post-COVID area as primarily using Instacart. But if you look, down to that second bar on the, as you can kind of look back in this deck, it was still a significant amount of people that would shift from primarily using it to still continuing to use it for most, but also shopping in store. So while it is low adoption, the frequency of usage, and I would say it enables you to do fairly easy shops. And for us in our household, we actually shop more frequently because if we need something midweek, it's fairly easy to hit that $35 threshold and have it delivered to you within a couple of hours. Okay, so the next slide is around kind of how much they're spending on these different platforms that we just spoke to on the previous two slides. And the area highlighted in light blue is the highest percentage amongst all these basket areas. So you'll see Instacart is the highest area of spend as a percent. Highest single area of spend as a percent is $35 or less, and that $35 threshold enables that. So enables that more frequent shopping. But you also saw on a previous slide that a large number of Canadians use this for some of their larger shops. So as you look at the top spending consumers the top percentages in the lowest area and the lowest baskets, it does represent a fairly large percentage. But as you drop down to $250 plus, the bottom three boxes, Instacart still does represent. It's actually the largest of the four other platforms in those large baskets. So there really is a variation in terms of how consumers are using it. It's going to continue to shift, especially as we move out of COVID and consumers are then having more of a hybrid of in-store versus Instacart. It'll be something very interesting to track, but there is quite a fragmentation in terms of how Canadians are using this platform, which also ties into that it's not just groceries, right? It's retail, it's makeup, it's electronics, and that will continue to grow. Okay, so our last two slides here. This is likelihood to recommend. And so this was a 5-point scale of very likely all down to not likely at all. And so when we look at the top two box of likelihood to recommend, which is just a similar metric to an NPS, but we just used a simpler 5-point scale, it really is comparable to other platforms in terms of recommending to friends and comparisons to really the best in class platforms like Costco.ca, Amazon, PC Express, and Walmart. And lastly, the key takeaways, which we've kind of shared throughout, we'll really summarize here. Instacart is here to stay, and they are a fast-growing. They've demonstrated profitability, and they are a heavily funded platform. They will continue to grow throughout COVID. They're likely going to see some contraction as they come out of COVID, but as they continue to tap from their existing members, as they continue to tap other platforms like Dollarama to join the platform, they've still got a large percentage of Canadians that they can attract onto it. It's really here to stay, and it isn't just focused in grocery, which means it's a more attractive platform than other platforms as they continue to expand that base. So it is something that you certainly need to pay attention to. And that slide that we showed around, okay, 11 or 12% of Canadians, that's impressive, but what does that really mean? As you compare to other platforms that are similar, it is actually a very competitive rate, especially for something like a scale-up startup like Instacart. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. This is the platform where I think it will make the difference between winning share and losing share, especially from a retailer perspective, but also from a brand perspective. We know that 60% of Canadian Instacart users have tried a new store. And as you introduce more stores onto the platform, that number is only going to grow. And then Canadian consumers are spending more within the platform, and 93% of Canadians think it's very important to discover new products on the platform. It lends for brands themselves to reduce that friction to add new products to the basket. There's room for Instacart to improve that discoverability of products, but we know that the Canadian consumer on the platform is really looking to discover new things, which ties into the fourth point as well. Getting in the friend zone is important, very important, as we talk about how convenient and easy to use the platform is, which does come with barriers of once that basket has been created and that behavior has been created, it's more difficult to penetrate that basket. So getting on the platform in its infancy, which is not quite in its infancy, but getting in early and making sure that as a brand, you're well represented there. The platform makes it easy to shop by sale, which is an absolute godsend for something like Costco, where they have these awesome sales. And it's already the best value, and you layer in the sale itself, which Camille helps kind of with that paying the premium. So it helps kind of offset that. That is a really easy way, and we know that many of the consumers on the platform are shopping by that sale category. It's a really easy way to get in that basket. So investing, making sure simply, there are still a number of products on the platform that just don't have images. So in terms of discoverability, that is a major barrier. So ensuring that you're there, ensuring that you're promoting properly, and ensuring that all the data is updated and relevant to make it easy to add that plus button and add it to their basket. We touched on the treasure hunter's reel, and I think we're really coming up on time here. The consumers are looking to find new products. And the last point is in-store pricing is important. And we saw that, there are, depending on whether they're a Costco shopper or just general that Camille talked to, there's still a significant portion of Canadians that aren't really aware that they're spending more on the platform. And as they become aware, it may shift them away from the platform, or it may shift them to other retailers on the platform that have this big call out that says in-store pricing. If you use the app, you'll see it places like Sephora, Indigo, Walmart. So having that in-store pricing as a retailer is important. A worthwhile investment.
And there's still an opportunity to have a variety of pricing options because, for example, Costco is a membership-driven service. And so if you do upload your Costco membership number, you are seeing a different price than if you don't, but you're still able to shop Costco if you're a non-member. So there's also opportunity for them to, kind of, Costco could offer in-store prices to their members, but have a premium for people that aren't paying for that membership as well. So lots of opportunity, and we're going to continue to keep capturing this data. So for those of you that can't stay on, no problem. Elise, if you could just scroll to the last slide so everyone can see our contact details. We will follow up on questions, but if you want to get in touch with either of us or have a specific question, feel free. I think the C is missing, Elise, on my email address there, but you can email Ransom. He's more responsive anyways. But yeah, if you guys want to get in touch, feel free. Otherwise, we'll follow up with questions following the webinar, and happy to stay on now and answer some. So for those of you that want to stay on, we'll just pop out the question pane and be right back to you.
Yes, let me see what we have. Thank you everyone for joining till the end. I know that was a lot of data and insights to go through. So again, we will be sending this deck as well as the webinar recording later this week, so you can have it for reference, because I know we went through a lot of things and sped through a lot of it near the end. So let me just take a look at some of the questions we have here. We do have quite a lot, so we won't be addressing all of them now, but maybe we can just look through one or two, and then the rest will definitely follow up through email.
Yeah, I think we'll take 5-10 minutes now and answer some questions. So at least maybe just go through and see kind of what's there, and I'll watch the numbers of people. If everyone leaves, no problem. We'll follow up with you over email. But I think
Okay,
everyone on.
Sure thing. Okay, so first, I think this is a question for a particular slide on unaided awareness. They're asking if we have unaided and aided awareness numbers. I believe we addressed that on one of the slides, but
yeah, we had awareness numbers. I don't think we asked specifically. We didn't use any brand logos or marketing materials to aid, but Ransom, did you want to answer that?
Yes, so I mean, technically it is aided, right? We asked them if they're aware of Instacart, rather than ask them, are they aware of any platforms that are kind of retail delivery services? So it was aided. So that number of 50% being aware, it was aided awareness. So it might be slightly inflated, but it'll be something that we continue to track month over month, or sorry, quarter over quarter. And with all the work that platforms are like Costco are doing to promote that they're available in a number of different ways, it's not surprising that the stat is that high. And as you look at younger generation, the awareness goes up, but it was aided.
Yes. Another question on the slide of consumers trying new retailers, do you think there's an opportunity for brand direct-to-consumer sites to be on Instacart?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think so for sure, because it's usually the delivery times that make people not buy. And a lot of the DTC platforms don't have, I mean, at least not in Canada, like the same day shipping. But I think it'll have to be localized, like to a specific region, because you can't, you can't suddenly get something that ships from a Toronto warehouse same day in Winnipeg, which is where I am right now.
Yeah, and it's something I mean, very easily we could say, hey, let's target existing Instacart shoppers and say, would you, not only would you purchase a brand, but if it were a specific brand, you could say, would you buy these types of category products, or would you buy this list of products from, Unilever or Reckitt or something? And we could very quickly get an appetite from existing Instacart shoppers, whether or not they would be interested in something like that.
I think even some of like the beauty brands, because a lot of the beauty brands in Canada too are direct to consumer, but like even like a retailer like Indigo, I mean, I didn't want to have to go to the store that day because I didn't have time, and I was able to get it the same afternoon, and it was a gift for a friend. So you start to think about gifting and shopping for different occasions as well. I think there's a big opportunity for a lot of different types of retailers to be on the platform.
All right, I think we'll do one last question and wrap things up. Do you think the lockdown of non-essential businesses drove the higher than expected percentage of where consumers are shopping for Indigo and Bed Bath & Beyond?
It's probably a good hypothesis. I mean, those numbers are really high at Indigo, and if you're looking at where you're going to get something for a gift or a loved one, or maybe just yourself or your household. And even when you look at some of the non-essential businesses, something like Bed Bath & Beyond, that may be a little more difficult to order and get your delivery time and drive to the store. Yeah, it absolutely played a part in it. We can't definitively say that it did because we didn't collect that data, but it's very likely that it did. And again, all the data that we collect, this is kind of a plug, but it's from our first party panel. So it's very easy for us to follow up or have a longitudinal study, even just in ad hoc ways. So if there were a data point that was missed here that we said, oh, that's an interesting point, or we have some data that we see, or a client wants to follow up, it's very easy for us to say, let's take this subset of the panel that responded to this question this way, and we'll ask them a series of questions to get some clarity. But I'd say that's probably
well, we'll also be able to find out in our quarterly tracker, because we're going to be able to see usage by retailer and be able to do that kind of pre, during, post comparison as well as we head into some of the future quarters. But yeah, the other thing to point out though is that housewares and homewares were like the sales were up kind of category wide. So I mean, even though Indigo is a book retailer originally, they have much more than books. So I think like all of those categories from a sales perspective were up. Canadian retailers, like furniture retailers like EQ3, I mean, they're sold out of everything. So as people were thinking about furnishing their office or decorating and getting some of those types of things from Indigo as well. Maybe we'll take one or two more questions, Elise, and then we can definitely follow up with people offline.
Sure. This is more, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but is it correct that there isn't a current way to spend advertising dollars on Instacart in Canada?
This might be as far as I can see. So they have, when you log onto the app, they have like a carousel of images, and then one is promoting TD. I haven't seen anything product specific on there. I think I've seen retail specific products where, if you sign up for certain things. As a brand, so we are connected in with Instacart, and we have a contact there. It's certainly something we could follow up with. But
yeah, they do have an ads platform, but to be honest, I'm not super familiar with it, not having used it as a brand. But we could definitely follow up with them.
And I haven't seen it as a consumer, so I mean, as it becomes more mature and available, I mean, it is. I think it's an absolute area where you invest, especially as people are starting to use the platform, and you enter that friend zone that we said, getting that add to that basket once, it remembers that, encourages that over time. So feel free to reach out to me, and then we can understand what advertising is available directly through Instacart and our contacts there.
Okay, one last question about the cattle panel. How do we ensure the survey respondents are representative of the entire Canadian population / Instacart Canada users?
Yes, so our platform, we got a fairly large sample, and so our platform is fairly representative geographically across the country. We do skew younger on the cattle platform on our panel. We skew younger to millennials. We skew more female than male. So what we do from a national representative perspective is we weight the data. And then from a representative sample of Instacart shoppers. So within our platform, we isolated based on primary grocery shoppers. We don't have the data to weight, so it's perfectly representative compared to the Instacart shopper data. But it is certainly something we can look in as we are tied in with Instacart. But we start with a base of a Canadian representative sample, and then from there we engage. But given that on our platform, from maybe a technical psychographic perspective, consumers may be more inclined to use a platform like Instacart, but the weighting does help offset some of that. So, our numbers we think are quite accurate. And I talked a little bit about our panel beforehand, and the work we've done through Environics, for example, with their prison profiling is we do have representation just within a week's worth of panel members across all of their prisons, which is I know we're tooting our own horn here, but it is very impressive to have that type of representation just within a week on one panel. So we are starting with a good base and starting with a good nationally representative sample, but I think there's room to improve as we start to interface more with Instacart.
Okay, great. I think that's a perfect place to stop. Thank you everyone who stayed on until the very end. Again, this deck and the recording will be shared with everyone who attended today. And if you have any specific questions that we didn't get to address, I know there was a few that we weren't able to go through right now. You can shoot us an email, or we will follow up with you if you did put a question through. So thank you everyone for your time and for joining Caddle again. And we hope to see you at our next event.